Half past the hour on ESPN. And I don't know if you heard this or not. Draymond Green devoted almost the entirety of his post-game news conference Monday night to talking about the way NBA teams treat their players, citing various examples of double standards around the league. It was fascinating. Give a listen to part of it.
To watch Andre Drummond before the game sit on the sideline, then go to the back, and then come out in street clothes because a team is going to trade him is bull. Because when James Harden asked for a trade and essentially dogged it, but he was castrated for wanting to go to a different team. As players, we need to be treated with the same respect and have the same rights that the team can have. Because as a player, you're the worst person in the world when you want a different situation. But a team can say they're trading you, and that man is to stay in shape. He is to stay professional, and if not, his career is on the line.
So that got a lot of attention for a lot of obvious reasons. And Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond are two players who right now are on the verge of being traded in the NBA. And so they've sort of decided the teams not to play them under these circumstances. And I wanted to bring in guys from two different sports here. So Domonique, Big Perk back with us, and Booger. But Perk, I'll start with you because it is from the NBA where this conversation emanates. So what was your reaction to what Draymond Green said the other night?
Well, you know what, G? Draymond spoke up for how a lot of players feel, right? And you have to be very, very careful because I'm going to tell you this. The NBA, the average NBA career is 3.5, 4 years. I was fortunate as a role player to make it 14 seasons, okay? And here's the thing. He was right. It was a lot of truth to what he was saying, but I'm going to say this. If you're not a superstar, and you're not an all-star type player, and you're a role player, and you're trying to stay in the NBA, your best bet is to be a true professional. And sometimes you have to roll with the punches because if you're trying to maintain a job and keep making good money, look, we're watching guys. I'm watching a guy by the name of Kevin Porter Jr. right now who's down in the G League, and it has nothing to do with his playing. It has everything to do with his lack of professionalism. We all know that he should be in the NBA, but guess what? GMs talk, owners talk, scouts talk, everybody talking. The first thing that they ask is what type of professional this guy is or what type of person this guy is. And once you get labeled unprofessional, it's hard to stay in the league, and you can find yourself on the outside looking in. One more example real quick, Greeny. Just look at what happened with Carmelo Anthony. He wasn't labeled a cancer or anything to that nature. They just labeled him as a guy that was at the end of his career that didn't want to take a lesser role, and he was out the league for like a year and a half. So You have to be careful if you're a role player.
Domonique, I think your perspective on this, I want to make sure everyone knows. You were the president of the NFL Players Association and then subsequently had a significant role at the NBA Players Association. So you have a sort of an intricate understanding of the way some of this business works. What did you think of what he said?
So I think there's two different conversations being had. What Perk is doing, I think, is useful, is telling players how to operate within the system. And what Draymond is doing is telling the system or the people who run the system what's wrong with your system and how we should move it to a more perfect system. So I understand both of those standpoints. If I had a kid in the NBA, I would be telling him some of the same things that Perk is saying, but I would also be yelling at the organizations about how this is unfair and inequitable. And I think that a lot of people look at this and think about how we're moving in a more player empowerment direction, particularly in the NBA and particularly with star players, and they still get that backlash if they try to take ownership of their careers, in part because when players take ownership of their careers, they're labeled cancers or not team guys. When teams start to mess around with guys' careers, they say, hey, it's a business. So we just want for that, I think that what Draymond is saying is he just wants the equity for it to be treated fairly. And it reminds me of like when Kurt Flood challenged the reserve clause. And I know back in the day, people looked at that like, oh, but this is a team. You can't do that. But we all accept that free agency is something that should exist in sports now. So I think that at some point, we'll get to the point where we all accept that players deserve the same type of latitude that we give to the teams.
Curt Flood was the first ever baseball player. Again, he became a free agent, sort of began the modern era of sports as we know it. And there are three different places where this criticism might emanate from. One could be from within the sport, which is what Perk said. Another could be from the traditional media. And then the third in this day and age is from social media. It's just from fans all across the country. And I think the players are hearing a lot of that as well. Booger McFarland, what is your perspective?
Well, Greeny, I think we're at a point in society right now where it's no longer take the snap and throw the ball or shut up and dribble. Players that have star power, players that have status are being able to use that. We're seeing Deshaun Watson. We saw James Harden. We saw so many players that are using their star power, their talent to make a move. What I would say is this, in the day and age of sports, and Domonique, you're the perfect person to bring this up to, in the day and age of sports where everything is collectively bargained, to me what Draymond is saying is, hey, let's treat everybody the same. It's okay to be traded. I've been traded. There's nothing wrong with trading a player, but why do you have to berate the player out, make him sit on the bench, change the street clothes, then when the player on the other side comes out, Greeny, to your point about social media, and says that I want to trade, now everyone, including us in the media, we make this player out to be a pariah. So is there some way from a collectively bargained standpoint, whether it's pro football, whether it's basketball, that we can come up with a way where these players aren't treated unfairly in a day and age, Domonique, where everything is collectively bargained in the NFL and the NBA?
The problem with that is you can't collectively bargain jealousy. And I think that's where a lot of it emanates from, is fans in particular, and some people in the media have a lot of jealousy because they're 20-something-year-old black guys who are making a lot of money playing the game, and for them to be upset with their situation, the reaction to that is, how dare you? And I can't collectively bargain people being reasonable, unfortunately.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.